In this episode of Game Terrain Engineering, I'm going to show you how to make a magical rune stamp. Hey everybody, I've got a short episode for you today, something that I made recently for an adventure I was running. In the adventure, my players encountered some circular runes on the floor, and I needed something to represent those runes, but I didn't want to paint on the tiles I was using, or the larger gridded pieces. So what I did was I went out to images.google.com and I did a search for magical runes, circular runes, and I found a bunch of them. And what I did was I printed them up on my laser printer, as you can see, and then I glued them onto some chipboard for strength, and then I gave them a purple wash just to give them sort of a not white color. But here's the thing, my players seem to be fine with these, but I don't like them, and I'll tell you why. For one, they're too perfect. The laser cutter, prints these out. Everything looks so good. It's nice and sharp. Everything, it looks like it was printed on a laser printer. I just didn't like that. The lines are too sharp. They're too perfect. The circles are perfect. And the other thing is, when you toss them down, they tend to move. They're not fixed in place. For some reason, I didn't like them. So it got me thinking, I should be able to come up with some alternative method. I looked around for some how-tos and things like that. And, painting things like this by hand can be very tedious. And also, trying to paint, not a perfect circle, but a near circle is very hard by hand. You could use stencils to put it down and then trace it with paint and things like that. But I have a 3D printer. So I put my head to work and I started thinking, how could I do this? So what I'm going to show you in the remainder of the video is the steps I took to create a stamp. And the stamp I'm talking about is this one right here. It's printed in green plastic. I glued some wood on the back, for a thing to hold. And as you can see, I recently used it with orange, coated it with orange paint. But let me show you how I made this. It does require a 3D printer, and I apologize, I have not yet been able to find an alternative to doing something like this without it. But let me tell you why I chose the 3D printer and why I like this final solution. It doesn't look perfect. When you coat this with paint and you make the stamp, there's the thickness of the line is different. Some of the emblems are scratchy or not quite perfect, and it looks like a rune on the tabletop that has had some wear and tear, or maybe it's been destroyed, or somebody's tried to alter it. It works, and I want to show you the final result, but before I do that, I want to show you how I made this and how I printed it. So let's go to that video real quick, and then I'll get to the actual using of the stamp. To create my rune stamp, I started at images.google.com, and I searched for rune circle. And you can scroll through all these different runes. You can see there are quite a few of them. And some of these would look really good 3D printed. Some of them are a little too intricate, and then some of them are just too simple. You kind of have to experiment around. I know what my printer is capable of. And I want to show you, it's this one right here. I found this one. I'll click on it. Here's the bigger image. So once you find the rune you want to use to make a stamp, you need to save it to your computer. This is a JPEG. I'll call it Rune 1. And because it's a JPEG, it cannot be imported into Tinkercad, which is the 3D modeling application that I'm going to be using. So in order to get it into Tinkercad, I need to convert this image to what's called an SVG file. And let me show you how you do that. It all starts at a website called online-convert.com. And this is a really nice website. You can convert all kinds of things like audio and video, but here it is, image converter. I'm going to drop this box down and choose SVG. I want to convert an image to SVG, and in just a second it's going to load up a window. Now this is real simple. I'm going to browse and specify the file. Here it is, Rune 1, and give it just a minute. All right, there it is, rune 1. I'm just going to convert this to a monochrome. So you click convert file, give it a few seconds to do its magic, and it's going to give you an opportunity to save the image again to your computer. This time, however, it's going to be called rune1.svg. If it doesn't download, you can click this download the converted file again, and it sort of forces the save. Here it is, rune1.svg. So I'm going to save that. It's on my computer. And now it's time to go to Tinkercad. After logging in on Tinkercad at tinkercad.com, I clicked the Create New Project button, which opens up this new empty space, this empty work plane here. I renamed the file RuneStamp just so I'll be able to find it later. And I need to use this import button. So I'll click Import, choose File, and here it is, rune1.svg. That's the file that I made using the onlineconvert.com website. So I'm going to click it. Now, some of these SVG files are quite large, so you might sometimes get an error like this one. Let me show you. I'm going to click Open. It tells me that this object is just too big for the workspace and I need to change it. Now, the dimensions of this object they're locked. So if I cut this one in half to say 540, it will automatically change the length so that the scale stays. And the error message is gone, so this should work. I'll click Import. And this can take anywhere from 5 seconds up to 30 seconds. And when it appears, it's going to be quite large, which is not a big deal because I can shrink it down. Now this is one solid object, so if I click it and then I hold the Shift key down and click on one of these corners and move the mouse, you can see how I can shrink it. I'm going to keep it on the workspace, and I don't know the final size yet, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I do want to change my dimensions. Right now I'm in millimeters. I'm going to edit the grid, change to inches, do an update grid, and now each one of these large squares is an inch. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a box out here, and I want to make it a 4x4, and I'm going to click here to shrink it down a little bit. So let's see, I want this to be 4 inches, which is right there, and I'll do this way, which is 7/8, 4. There we go. That is a 4-inch by 4-inch block. I'm going to shrink it down to a 16. Well, let's do an 1/8 of an inch. That'll work. It's an 1/8 of an inch thick. Then I want to drag this the rune. I want to actually, before I drag the rune, you can see how if I drag it in there, it sort of disappears. Well, let me show you. Hold on. There we go. See how it's disappearing? I need to make it taller than this box. So I'm going to grab its height control and drag it up to 1/4 inch. Actually, I'm going to drag it higher than that. I'm going to go up to 3/8. There we go. I'm going to then drag it over on top of here, on top of the box. I'm going to select both, and I want to align. I want to center it. So I'll center it along this axis, and that puts the circle, the rune, right in the middle of it. Now if I look at it from the side, you can see that the stamp part will be the rune, and the base here will fill in the empty spaces between the symbols, and it'll hold it all together. So this is what I'm going to print out. All I have to do is do an export, save it as an STL file, and that STL file is what I'm going to send to my 3D printer. So I have a piece of pink foam here, painted black. This also works on a gridded piece of tile if you have that. But I've got a lot of bright red here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to load this up with red just by painting it on. And this, I've done a few of these, and what I've learned is it really starts working well after you get a lot of paint put on it. A couple different layers, and I think that's just because as the paint builds up, it gives it a thickness, and you do need to put a lot of paint on this. I mean, it's got to be, especially the edge, the circular edging here, you've got to get it on there. And a lot of as you can see, a lot of the paint is going down into it. There's a little bit of waste, but I want it to look good, so I'm going to load all the symbols up with a good dose of red. Make sure there's no orange left. There we go. Okay. All right. Now, here comes the press. Put it on there. You got to push it down really good. Get a good seal on everywhere. Move your fingers around. Press in the center. Pull off. And look at that. Now, granted, you can see there's a little bit of missing here. I could have probably put a lot more on. But what I like about this is take a look at it. It's very bright. It also doesn't look perfect. I mean, there's some, the symbols are not quite 100% solid. There's a missing section right here. If that bothers you, then of course you're going to want to load this up really heavy to make sure there's no missing areas. But this does not bother me whatsoever. It looks like an old magical rune that's got some damage to it. If it's functional or not, that's up to the players to figure out. Maybe because of the damage here, the spell doesn't work quite the right way, or maybe it's still fully functional. It's just wear and tear on the rune that's been painted. I really like it. I hope you do too. The red turned out really nice. I did one with orange and it turned out well too, but the red on black just looks really good. Now, one other thing you can do, and I might do another video if I might add something to the end of this. If you have some glitter, sprinkle some glitter over the glue, over the paint, and it'll give it that much more of a magical effect. But that's it. That's that's the magical rune stamp. This red paint will dry and it'll thicken up the edge just a little bit, and it'll give me even more surface to put the next coat on. I might do a blue one or a green. But as you can tell, I'm not going to rinse the paint off. I don't want to do that. It's getting thick on the plastic edges, and I think that actually works to the benefit of the stamp. So there you go. Stamp, magical rune. This time around I have a gridded piece of tile that I've painted black. I've also got some blue paint and some purplish blue extra fine glitter. So I'm going to start out by putting as much of this blue onto the stamp as I can. And I think this time I'm going to go heavy with it. I don't use the blue that often, so I think I'll squeeze out as much as I can and use some extra. And let's see. Not gonna skimp here. Okay, so let's just get it on there as thick as we can. Get it around the red edge of the circle. All right, now I think I've got it fully covered, but I'm just gonna slap it all on here. Keep going. And this is it. I'm almost done. Now, as soon as I take the stamp off, I'm gonna open glitter and go crazy with it. All right, one more good polish with this. All right, that ought to do it. All right, trying to get the air bubbles out. All right, there we go. All right, let's see. Push down nice and hard. All the edges in the center. Okay. All right, lift it up, pull it off. Oh yeah. All right, now comes the glitter. Let's go. All right. That looks really cool. I don't know how it looks in the video. Video sometimes doesn't give you the full effect, but man, that looks pretty darn cool. And it's actually, painted on the tile, so it's not going to come off. I guess the glitter could be scraped off, but I do a polyurethane coating on a lot of my tiles, so if I really wanted this to stay permanently, I would just give it a good spray of that and lock it in. But that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Now again, the center image isn't all that well defined, but you can tell it's a magic rune. You can see the circles, you can see the strange arcane symbols. So here's the one without glitter. Here's the one with glitter. Hope you like that. And that's it. One magical rune stamp. I like the results of this much better than the laser printer versions. and glued onto chipboard. These would do in a pinch if this is what you got to do. And I washed these with a purple paint, but I just, like I said, it's too perfect. These, they have just the right amount of messiness to them. They look actually painted on the ground. This one right here has the sparkles to it. You can't really, that's too bad you can't tell in the video about the glitter there, but yeah, the glitter looks so good. I'll take some photos, maybe it'll show up in the photos. And then of course the plain red one right here. So this was a non-gridded piece of tile. This was a gridded, works the same, just got to press down really hard. Remember to coat it with a lot of paint if you don't want to get the the missing areas right there. So there you go with this one. I went real heavy on the paint and then added glitter and not heavy on the paint. So I hope you like that. Now I know how to make magical runes in the future. I could probably print up 2 or 3 more. There's obviously different patterns, as you can see, that I got off the image search here. So all of these could be turned into a stamp. And just rewind the video if you want to see again how I made this using Tinkercad. Hope you like it. And again, if you decide to do something like this, please upload a photo. I would love to see your final results. Take care. I'll see you next episode.